Texas fans, please hear me out and please listen to this. You're not rebuilding, you just suck. Over the past 5 to 6, 7 years, you haven't been rebuilding. If anything, you're getting worse. Alright, we gotta talk about the Texas football program. They suck. It doesn't make any sense, but it kinda does, and I'll explain that in just a minute. Let's start off this video with a cold hard fact. You know me, I like to have evidence to go with my statements. In the NFL draft recently, there was 262 players selected. 0 of them were from Texas. Yeah, that's right, you heard me correctly. Texas didn't have a single player selected in the NFL draft. You can make up the excuse that they didn't have a lot of players enter the draft. I don't care, that's unacceptable for a powerhouse of a program like Texas. Football is everything there. There are some high school stadiums there. This isn't a joke. You can go look it up for yourself. They're bigger than college universities. They live, eat, breathe, sleep football in that state. To go along with that, it's not like they're bad and they like it. They have 4- and 5-star recruits in their backyard. So how does a state that worships the sport of football, has all the best 4- and 5-star athletes in the country, and then the biggest brand, the biggest college in that state suck? I don't know. Okay, I lied. I do know, and it's not as complicated as you may think. It all starts with your leader. Whoever's driving the ship, whoever the captain is, that's where it starts first. Does the football coach go out there and play the snaps? Does he play the meaningful minutes? No, but the players get the mindset from him. It trickles down. That's why you have NBA coaches and even NFL coaches. A player may know a lot about the game, but a coach is valuable. If you disagree with that statement, if you watch NBA basketball, I think you know what I'm about to say. The Brooklyn Nets had maybe 2 of the most skilled players in the history of NBA basketball. I'm talking about the history of the game, and they get swept in the first round of the NBA playoffs. I'm referring to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and both of them have stated they don't even need a head coach in the NBA. They said that statement on a podcast a while back, and ironically enough, what do you know? They get swept and embarrassed. In the playoffs, Kevin Durant, he's great and he's skilled, but the head coach, Steve Nash, he was terrible. There was no movement on offense, and it was strictly isolation, and I don't care how good you are. When the defense can sit in, lock in, and focus on you, you're not going to be too successful. If Kevin Durant can't succeed with no coach, I don't think nobody can. Look how easy it was for him with the Golden State Warriors. He almost made it look too easy, and that's why I think he left. He thought it was too simple. I think he sat back and said, man, I want a new challenge, and he just got to the point where he wanted to leave. You can believe what you want, you can think what you want, whatever. If you have 5-star recruits, none of that matters if you're not a good coach. You don't got to be a rocket scientist to figure out Texas hasn't found that great head coach yet, and they've gone through a couple in the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. They can't find that right guy, and that's okay because you're not going to find a Dabo Swinney, a Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Nick Saban just laying around the block. Do I like their new hire, Steve Sarkisian? I think he's a great offensive coordinator. I'm not so sure about a head coach. I can't give you my opinion on his head coaching abilities because I haven't really witnessed it outside of what he did at USC, and that wasn't too good. It would be ludicrous and unfair for me to even try to say he's not a great head coach or good or just even rate him at all. I'll leave it at this. We're going to see what he's made of this year because Texas, they don't play around. If you're not good and you're underperforming, you're going to be out of there quick. Although I can't judge him, I will say this. I think the guys they hired before were worse than he'll be. I hope for the fans of Texas' sake, he can be better, but it's going to take time. It's not going to happen next year. Last year, Texas went 5-7. It was pitiful. You beat Louisiana, Rice, Texas Tech, TCU, and Kansas State. You beat 5 teams, and none of them were really that good. You lost 7 games, and the most concerning part about their losses wasn't the fact they lost, it was how they lost. I don't get caught up in the box score. I like to watch the games, and sometimes a close game on paper, it could have been a blowout in reality. You could have beat a team 35-21, but they scored 2 late touchdowns with 4 minutes to go against the third-string defense. In their second game against Arkansas, the final score was 40-21, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you remember watching that game, it wasn't even that close. How do I say this in the most respectful way possible? I thought Arkansas embarrassed Texas. Arkansas did whatever they wanted to in that game, and it wasn't even a close contest from the start. If you're a Power 5 school, more importantly Texas, and I'm going to emphasize that because they're supposed to be this prestigious program, and you get blown out by Arkansas on a national media. I mean, this was a primetime game. They get blown out. What do you say to that? As a Texas fan, as a booster for that program, as an alumni, how do you feel? Maybe I don't give Arkansas enough credit, and it's because I really don't believe in that program. I think they had a lot of fluky wins last year. but they're not no top SEC dog. I think at best they're in the middle of the pack of the SEC, and that's at best. And you mean to tell me you get blown out by them? And I understand Texas, they were having quarterback problems and it's early on in the year, but Arkansas, it's early on in the year for them. I've never understood that entire debate. How if you have an early loss, people try to say, oh, well, they're figuring out the system. Well, what do you think the other team you're playing is doing? Both teams in that game are figuring out everything. It's the first or second game for both teams. Last year, there was also many losses where they were beating a team in the second half. They should have beat Oklahoma, should have beat some other teams, and they just blew it. Not too much to say about those. They're self-explanatory. The two other concerning losses to me, though, where I was like, man, maybe Texas isn't even close to being back in 2 or 3 more years, was Kansas and Iowa State. You lose to Iowa State 30-7. Look, I don't got to sit up here and tell you that's embarrassing. You understand that. What's embarrassing, and I don't even know if that word does it justice, is losing at home to a miserable and terrible Kansas program 57-56 in overtime. I don't care if you lost in overtime. Losing to Kansas at home and you're supposed to be Texas? Come on now. I remember watching that game, and the first thing that came to my mind is you could clearly tell Texas had way more talent on the team, but the difference was Kansas wanted to win that game. That game meant something to Kansas. Those players, they were playing with all their heart, and I gotta give them credit. They weren't as talented as Texas, but they outworked them. It's the cliche quote, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. It is corny, it's cliche, whatever you want to call it, but it's true sometimes. There is some circumstances where you can be talented and not work as hard and still win, but that wasn't the case in that game. I'm only bringing up those 3 losses, and more importantly, the Kansas one, because it told me a lot about the program. Whoa, hold on. I know what you're probably sitting there thinking, yo, Matt, that was last year. It's next year. Why are we focusing on the past? We got to move forward. I agree with you 100%, but here's what I want you to understand. Before you move forward, you got to fix some stuff. For example, let me put it in a better perspective. Let's say you get in a car wreck and you hit a tree. You're just not going to call anybody and you're not going to fix your car and continue to try to drive it? Let's say your car's on fire. You're going to try to drive it without putting the flame out? That's what I'm talking about with Texas. It's like their car's been on fire the past 5 to 6 years, and they're still trying to drive it without putting out the flame and fixing the parts. It's a crap show, and this program should be 10 times better. With all that being said, here's the biggest problem. I've been around sports my entire life. I've been on winning teams, I've been on teams that went undefeated, and I've been on losing teams that could only win 5 to 10 games. I've experienced the best of the best and the worst of the worst. So therefore, I feel like I have a right to speak on this because I can relate to both sides. It's not so much about going undefeated. It's not so much about losing every single game. It's more about the culture. You can have a bad season on paper, go 2-10, 5-7, or 6-6, 7-6, but you can understand the culture's getting better. The thing with Texas that has hurt them over the past couple of years is it doesn't appear to seem the culture's getting better whatsoever. You're probably sitting there saying, yo, Matt, what specifically are you saying about culture? What do you mean by that? And that's a good question. Go back and watch the film. Go back and watch the Kansas game. Did it really look like those Texas players, they wanted to win that bad? I don't think so. You want to know why this program hasn't gotten too much better over the past couple of years? It's because they don't care about losing. It doesn't hurt their feelings. Those Texas football players, they're used to losing, and that is a bad thing. And trust me, I can relate to that 100%. When you lose 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 games, you start to get used to it. You see what I'm saying? Whereas on the other hand, I'm sure some of you can relate as well. If you're on a winning team and you win 8, 9, 10 games in a row, you get used to it. The bad part is when you get used to losing, you don't have that fire burning inside of you. Look, I don't care what you guys say. I got to bring it up. They're the gold standard. Look at Alabama. Whenever those Bama players lose one game, they are furious and pissed off and they come for blood the game after. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe after every loss Nick Saban has suffered at Alabama, they've won the game after. Those Alabama players, those Georgia players, those Ohio State players, those Oklahoma players, they hate losing so much, they're not even wanting to win that bad. They just don't want to lose. Okay, I said that wrong. Let me go back on that statement. It's more of when they win, it's a sigh of relief. They don't party about it. They don't celebrate winning like other teams. It's just like, okay, that's what we're supposed to do. Whereas Texas, on the other hand, those players aren't expecting to win 10 or 11 games anymore. Let's talk about next year, though. Let's not try to focus too much on the past. Let's look forward. I'm not concerned on the offensive side of the ball. They got weapons. I love Bijan Robinson. I think he may be the best running back in the country. And they also got the #1 quarterback in the country, Quinn Ewers. Offensive side of the ball, they got plenty of weapons, and they showed last year they can score. The real problem next year, and it's not going to get fixed in 1 year, you can cross that out of your mind, is the defense. They may get better because honestly they can't get too much worse, but it was bad last year. And when I say bad, I don't mean just bad, because I think Alabama's defense last year was really bad at times. I mean, Texas is borderline, like, you can't even watch them play. The first thing they got to fix is their tackling. They miss so many tackles, it pisses me off watching them. I don't understand how a running back can break not just one tackle, that's fine, but when he starts breaking 3, 4, 5, and the wide receivers are breaking tackles left and right, that's a problem. A little fun fact I'll give you, not even a fun fact, it's a straight up cold hard fact. Texas defense allowed 35.3 points per game last year. Realistically speaking, how many games are you going to win when your defense is giving up 35 every single night? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say not too many, and it also puts a ton of pressure on your offense. I think Quinn Ewers is going to be successful, but it's going to take time. Whenever you have a young quarterback like that, you don't want your defense giving up 35 points per game, because then it already adds pressure on top of pressure, and that's a bad thing. If your defense gives up 21 points in the first half, he's going to feel like he has to make a superhero play, and it may be an interception or a pick six and make it worse. The defense is a mess, and I don't think it's going to get better next year. I don't think it's going to get too much worse, but I don't think it's going to get too much better. You hired an offensive coach. I love to hire because it's 2022. You got to have an offensive mastermind running your system. But at the same time, how are you going to expect your defense to improve when you hired an offensive head coach? Only time will tell, but that's my take on it. I don't see the defense getting too much better. I did some more digging and research if you are curious. Overall in the country, Texas was ranked exactly 100 in total defense. They gave up a whopping 6.03 yards per play. That's not going to cut it. One thing that has mind-boggled me the past 5 to 6 years is every single time Texas wins one big game, and I got to give them credit, they'll win one big game every 1 to 2 years. What do their fans say? Oh yeah, Texas, we're back, baby. They still say it here and there, but it's not quite as much as they were saying 2, 3, and 4 years ago. Now what all these Texas fans are saying, oh, we're not back, but we're rebuilding. Texas fans, please hear me out and please listen to this. You're not rebuilding, you just suck. Over the past 5 to 6, 7 years, you haven't been rebuilding. If anything, you're getting worse. You have to come to a point in time where you get self-aware and look at yourself and look at your football team and go, dang, maybe we're just not that good. Every time you have a down year, you can't say we're rebuilding. That makes you look stupid. Overall, I still think Texas, it's a complete mess. The program's a mess. And that game against Alabama in the second week, it's going to be interesting. It's going to tell us a lot. And not so much whether they win or lose, because obviously they're more than likely going to lose, but it's how they play the game. Can they keep it close? Can they look competitive? If they can look competitive and look like they can compete with the Alabamas of the world, the program might start heading in the right direction. But here's what you don't want if you're a Texas fan. You go out there, Alabama completely obliterates you, and not only does that make Texas fans sad, but it's going to bring down the mojo and the ego of the Texas players themselves. Let me know what you think about Texas down below. I'm very curious. But what up, peace.